Hey everyone, it's the Real Gil, MG. I'm currently standing on the opposite side of the camera. So these are my hands. I will be showing you the beginning stages of assembling your own solar panels using, I think these are polycrystalline solar panels. This one's a bit chipped. Something to be said about solar panels is that these come in a few different sizes. This is a 6x6, so this is 6 inches by 6 inches, perfect square, well, except for the chip. You can get them commonly in 3x6 as well, so this is about double the size of a normal panel or a normal cell that you'll be able to purchase. These are 3 to 3.5 watt cells and half a volt each. Now, as I said, they're really brittle. In fact, I was messing with one and dropped it, and it shattered into a ton of little pieces. These are still good as long as these wires, and I'm going to show you how to tab them in a second, but these wires that are coming off are still connected. Obviously this won't be 3 watts, but it still will produce some electricity. So even if you get some Class B or Category C panels, you will still be able to make them work. They of course won't generate the full amount of electricity that you would get out of normal panels, but regardless they will still work. Just to demonstrate how flimsy they are, I'm just going to go ahead and apply a little bit of pressure, and they broke. So that was almost nothing. And they can be rather sharp whenever you break them, so please be careful. Now what you're going to need for this, I have my left hand, the glove, so I don't get lead or solder or any of the stuff on my hand. I'm going to be using my right hand predominantly with this soldering iron that I have. You don't need a super great soldering iron. This one has like a light and everything, as well as a really dirty tip. But you're going to want a soldering iron. You're going to want something like a sponge to wipe it off on, clean it off so it's a little bit nicer. You're going to need tabbing wire, which right here I've got tabbing wire. This is pretty common. This is pre-tinned a little bit, but I'm going to show you both ways of putting it on with and without solder. I've got a little board rigged up here where I can pull the tabbing wire through, and I've got another little notch right here. I know that between this push pin and this push pin, that's about 12 inches or 2 panels. So what I'm going to do is for the tabbing wire, once it's that long, I'm going to go ahead and clip it, and I will have the tabbing wire that is going to be necessary for one contact on that solar panel. So we're going to get that in a second. You're going to need a flux pin. This is a Kester flux pin, 186 rosin flux. This is going to be what you put on these white areas, and also on the back these white areas again. And this is where the solar cell makes contact. This is going to help adhere the tinned tabbing wire to the actual solar panel. So you definitely need this. This is cheap. I got this, the tabbing wire, and the bus wire all in a package. I think it was $20 for flux pin and 72 feet of tabbing wire, as well as 15 or some odd feet of bus wire. You're not going to use a lot of bus wire, so don't worry about it. I'm not going to show you in this video, but bus wire is used to connect all of your big strings of cells, so you create 4 or 5 cells together in sequence. The sequence of cells are just going to be something kind of like this. I've done this one already. It's going to be more than one, and this is actually a poorly done cell because there's not a lot of room between them, but it's going to be more than one cell connected to form a panel. This is about a 6 watt panel, 6 to 7 watt panel, and this is 1 volt. So ideally, whenever you're charging a 12 volt battery, you're going to want to go a little bit over because of loss. You're going to want to go with an 18 volt panel, so 36 of these to make an 18 volt panel, and 36 times 3, it's a little over 100 per panel. So once you have your tabbing wire already pre-cut, and I have my tabbing wire right here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move this this little station I made from a Dell keyboard tray. We're going to move that sideways so it's kind of out of shot for a minute, and I'm going to bring in another piece of cardboard. Alright, so this is a full intact 6x6 panel. Now the first thing we're going to do is, I'm going to center it up here, we're going to take and we're going to get the flux pin, we're going to draw lines on this top bit on all 3 of these. It's okay if it gets on the solar panel because it's not going to impede so much the transfer of sunlight. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of tabbing wire, straighten it out, and we're going to hold it in the middle, make sure that it goes across the entire line. Just typically line up the ends and then kind of push the middle. Now this is really soft metal, so just understand that it's not going to be a straight line. It came shipped in a roll, and you're going to have to play with it a little bit. Try to wear rubber gloves though, if you can, because this flux is going to make the panel really sticky. So just be prepared for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm gently going to apply pressure, kind of in a side motion, until the tinning on the wire melts a little bit, and I'm going to walk it all the way down one side. Now, be aware, this wire is going to heat up. I mean, it's metal. It conducts, heat and electricity. So when it gets a little hot, let go and just keep on pushing it down until it sticks. Now, that tacked it down a little bit. You can see the discoloration in the video. This part is not soldered yet. Everything else is. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to finish that off, align it, and push it on down. Watch out whenever you're at a certain angle because it can scratch your panel. Again, nothing wrong with that. Just means you're going to lose a little bit, but still works. And again, readjust this tabbing wire if you need to. Now, there's not a lot of fumes right now coming up, but if you're doing this with real solder, I'm going to show you in a second, you're going to want to be in a properly ventilated and proper, air-conditioned area. You're not going to want to do this inside where you could, I guess, breathe in too much lead. This works with silver solder, just as, with lead solder, silver solder, pretty much every type of solder. So that is kind of what we're looking at now, and that's on there. So, good. The next one I'm going to do is with actual solder. Now, this is a better way in a lot of ways, and in some ways rather, it's better to do it this way. I'm going to let you be the judge. You're going to have to, decide what you like better. I have some solder over here. I'm going to go ahead and just get a little bit of solder on my soldering iron, not too much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, it's just I'm going to dab it on, and that solder is going to really quickly just bind itself to the tabbing wire. And if you don't go too fast, you can walk it down. What it's going to do is, depending on what type of soldering iron you have, you may be able to do it a little bit nicer. You want a good soldering iron, but this is like a $20 soldering iron I think I picked up at Lowe's. It's got no variable temperature. You just walk that solder down. Don't be scared to get more solder. Again, the only problem with putting too much solder is that it's going to become really, it's going to have a lot of top solder on it, so it's not going to sit flat on something. These shouldn't be sitting too flat anyway. There should be a little bit of space between the glass or the plexiglass or the plastic. Anyway, you're going to finish by doing another tab. I'll go ahead and I'll take care of that real quick, and then we'll get on to attaching this cell to another cell, and that's going to go ahead and complete our panel, our small panel. Now again, like I said, you don't want to touch this flux too much because it will leave fingerprints, but since this is probably a demo panel anyway, not going to be that big a deal. Another thing to be careful for is whenever you are making these, be mindful of your other hand, the one that's not holding anything, except a soldering iron rather. If you're coming from left to right, you're going to want to make sure you don't put too much pressure on the opposite side of the cell, because it can break. And if you're going from right to left, same thing. If I wasn't videotaping, I would be sitting down. I'm kind of standing up right now, and it it's hard to see, but I'd kind of come across the top like this. I just get a lower angle of view. And that's on there. Something to take into account and look at, take it and hold it at the side, and just make sure that you can't see under it. Like if there's like a little hump coming off of it. This one looks pretty good despite, you know, trying to talk while I do it. There's a little notch right there and another notch right there. So it's not perfect. There are some better ones out there. Anyway, so let's go ahead and create a panel. We're going to go ahead, I'm going to get a section that I pre-tabbed. So this is another one that I made earlier, and you can see that there's a couple little burn spots. That's not going to hurt anything. What we're going to want to do is you're going to want to take one of these panels and you're going to want to flip it upside down, because we're going to connect these tabbing wires to these sets of contacts on the back. For a solar panel or a solar cell, the tops are always the negative sides and the bottoms are the positive sides. So like a battery, if I was to connect this top to this bottom, I would get a negative charge, positive charge, and together it would power something. Maybe something small like, I don't know, an LED or, you know, something like that. When this is all said and done, this will be able to run a blender, or this will be able to run a coffee pot, or it'll be able to land Apollo 13. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to sit down for this, and we're going to connect these two together and make a panel. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to decide which one's going to go where. Since this has a little bit of tabbing on the front, it was cut, it's not exactly straight. I'm going to go ahead and put this one face down, and I'm going to turn this one I'm going to put this one face up and this one face down. And I'm going to not do this right. I'm going to put them both face down, excuse me, and pick this one up a little bit so that all of the all the wires on the top. Now, what you might want to do is build, if you're going to be doing this a lot, I'm actually working on building, and I'm going to show this in another video, I'm working on building a some wooden type of thing. I can just lay all these in there and then go through and tab all of these at once. But you may want to look at getting spaces between these. In this earlier example I brought in, there's not a lot of space between them, and that's a problem because this is very rigid, it could break, and it's just generally not a good idea. Besides, whenever you're putting panels together, there's going to be always extra space. If there isn't, if you're building panels so that it can't expand or contract, whether you're making it out of metal or wood, really, really bad idea. It's not a bad idea in the fact that it will expand, but you're not accounting for shock, impact, things like that. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did on the front. We're going to take, and I'm just going to offset this real quick, take this flux pin, and we're going to draw, and again we're going to take care to not put too much pressure. We're going to fill in these contact spots, and again it's okay to put flux on places that's not contact, not going to be that big of a deal. Then we're going to line all of them up, get our spacing, and do exactly the same thing we did on the front. Now you don't have to touch all of these, but it's best if you do. So what I'm going to do is, once I've got my spacing, and again, depending on how these come off of the front panel, that's how they're going to sit. Go ahead and just kind of do your best with it. It's okay if they come off a little bit after you've soldered them on, because you can always reheat it and resolder it. This one looks like it's going to go pretty well. Be careful with the soldering iron, it's hot. Hot things burn you. I'm not going to show it in this video, but eventually I'm going to show you a finished panel. Finished panel that's connected to a solar charger, or I might just do it to a DC motor so you can see in full daylight exactly what, what a solar panel can do. People seem to think that solar panels are, I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of solder on that one, it's being stubborn. People seem to think that solar panels can't do much. Well, that's a lie. Solar panels can do a lot. Watch out for the smoke. Solar panels can charge and do a lot. It all matters about what, how you're doing it and what exactly you want to do with it. Don't expect it to charge or run a motor straight out for hours on end. But in a hurricane situation, which we're in Louisiana, we have a ton of hurricanes here, typically. This could be used to charge batteries that charge cell phones in an emergency situation. Depending on if you have 4G or LTE, that could really come in handy. You could stay in touch with the world when the internet's down. If the phones are down, nothing you can do about it, but we're going to go ahead and just finish these up. And you can come back, even though I'm not using solder on any of these, you can come back and you can put solder. It's not going to hurt anything. Just apply a little bit of variable pressure. And that's it. We're going to do a little bit of a lift check. Lift check looks good. Put our soldering iron back, and now we've got a panel. It's a small panel, but that's fine. You never want to really do what I just did. You want to always kind of grab these from the center. It's a little bit of flexible, which is fine. You're going to keep doing this until you have a string that's unmanageable. Typically that means you're going to have 4 of these. So you have an 8x4 or an 8x3 or a 4x4. That'll probably be the best way to do it. Get or what is it? A 4x an 8x3, excuse me, to get anyway, get enough cells in there in a panel to make 18 in one. So either it's 2 strips of 9 or 3x6. That's not right either. Oh yeah, it is. Can't do math. It's all these fumes from solder. Anyway, you want to get in this case you want to get 16 in one panel, 16 in another, and then you run those in series to make it seem like 32 panels are connected. So, or 36 panels are connected rather. So that's how you make a solar cell. I am the Real Gil, MG, and pretty soon I'm going to be putting these in a box and hooking them up to something and actually showing you, how to do that next step. But from now on, from now until then, not a bad idea. Go ahead and pick a couple of these up. I bought mine off of eBay. I think I paid for 72 of these guys. I paid a little over $100, and that's not bad. As long as you're buying them for less than $1 a watt, it's typically a good idea. And again, the tabbing wire and all the the flex pin and the bus wire, that was a negligible amount, $20 or whatever. You want to try to find for cases probably some cheap, inexpensive, or free wood, glass, plastic, plexiglass, things like that. A lot of people will try to laminate them and cover them in acrylic or epoxy or something like that, resin. I'm not going to do that in the next video. Probably going to use plywood, but or treated wood with some sealant. But I'm going to show you a really cool way that I learned how to assemble and then be able to completely disassemble a full panel. So until then, I am the Real Gil. Please check me out at therealgill.com. That's TheRealGill.com. Until then, always turn this off. In fact, unplug it. Just unplug it completely.